Blog Talk Radio.
The motherfucking saga continues.
Yo, what's up, world? It's badass thuggin' like I usually do, and you better turn it up, bust some speakers out, cause we off the motherfucking cuff. You dig how we do it? Dog Pound Gangsters 2000 and beyond. Blech.
What's up with it, John? Man, don't change that down. This your player partner, the legendary Cocaine. And you tuned in live to Off the Cuff Radio. Better not touch that down. Well.
Yeah, this is Cassidy, the hustler. And right now, you listening to the Guillotine. Show them the respect they deserve, man. Off the Cut Radio, man. Y'all already know how they doing it, man. I need y'all to stay tuned. They've been doing it for years, so show them the respect they deserve. And you heard it out of bars, mouth. Easy.
Keep it moving like this. Yo, this your boy Rampage. You're not rocking with the best. With Off the Cuff Radio. Classic. History. Fix your face to all you haters. We off the cuff, baby.
What's up, everybody? This your girl, Bonnie Dollars, the Queen of Trap, representing Crenshaw, and you are now tuned in with Off the Cuff Radio. What's up? What's up, y'all? This is Miss Irresistible, giving a shout out to the livest show on Friday nights, Off the Cuff Radio, and I'm live from the 704. Make sure y'all tune in for the blazing hot music.
What it ain't, what it do. It's Chili Chill from that original Lynch Mob. And Off the Cuff Radio, always where it's at on Friday nights. West, y'all.
All right. What it is, this your man, King Eric, the media assassin. We're now tuned in to Off the Cuff Radio, episode 539. Got my host, T-Max, with the facts in the building. What's good?
Man, what it do, y'all. Another Friday night of fantastic on the OTC frequency. Shout out to our co-host of Serialized Dead Man, Lady Chinchilla. We are live and direct, ready to give you the best in hip-hop internet radio, and you know how we flow. And King, tonight we have a very special guest with us. This individual is one of the most, words can't really describe how astute, how scholarly, how superb this man is at his craft in terms of being a podcaster, journalist. Everything about this individual encompasses the essence of hip-hop in terms of appreciation for the art, understanding the history, and doing dope-ass interviews just like we do. Representing Kentucky, Louisville most notably. You know, he's definitely the guy you need to check out on the Chad Kiser podcast. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Chad Kiser. Welcome.
What's good, man?
Yo, what's up, guys? What's good? Thanks for having me.
What's going on, man? Thank you for coming on, man. It's great to have you with us.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, definitely. Look, reading through your website, and definitely watching some of the interviews, man, you definitely got a knack for this thing. And that's putting it mild. You're a pro with this shit.
Man, I just try my best. That's all I can do.
Definitely, man. I guess we get into it right about we do about this time. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and all the great people that you met along the way doing it once you got started.
Oh, man. Well, I got started doing the interviews and podcasting and things like that. Guess it was back like 2006, 2007. Did my first interview with Shorty V of the Dangerous Crew, Too Short's Dangerous Crew.
Yeah,
yeah, and from there, man, it just took off from there. I started a little series on the WCNN website called the Dangerous Crew series, where I just went around and was interviewing anybody and everybody that I could that was affiliated with that crew. So I did like Shorty B, Pee Wee, Ant Banks, Too Short, Goldie, even some of their affiliates like MC Breed, who did some stuff with them. And from there, man, it just kind of took off, man. Just kind of took off.
What was it like going to Oakland in terms of, or just talking to them about that Oakland aesthetic in terms of, I mean, because I remember Goldie, of course, he had that album In the Land of Funk. Of course, Ant Banks, the legendary Ant Banks, the badass from the Bay, who Too Short said, you can't have, you know, you got to have that Ant Banks bass on your music to make it sound right. What was that? What did you find? What did you find about dealing about the Bay Area sound and the culture from interviewing all those guys?
That it was a very different culture. Like a lot of people, when they think of California, you know, obviously they think of LA, and
right,
you know, that whole environment and atmosphere. But you know, going up, you know, to Northern Cali up there in the Bay Area and Oakland and all that, it's a whole different, mindset up there, and it's reflective in the music that those guys put out, and not just like, you know, Too Short and Ant Banks or Goldie and them guys, but even guys like Rappin' Forte, E40, you know, Sibo, like all those guys that came out of the Bay. It was, you know, it was a whole different thing, and those guys put it down. They really put it down. So, give props to them. Ant Banks, you know, the originator of the Oaktown Funk. Like, the way I look at it, especially when I was coming up, you know, when I was listening to West Coast music, it was either I'm listening to like Dre and Snoop and Dogg Pound and those guys, or I was listening to Too Short, Ant Banks, you know, Goldie and you know, Rappin' Forte and those guys. So for me, that was the West Coast.
Yeah.
Especially the people that pioneered that sound. Yeah, especially the people that pioneered that sound. Not only like Ant Banks, but we talk about like Mike Mosley.
Oh yeah.
We talking the Mechanics.
Rick Rock.
Yeah. I mean, the Federation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just so rich out there because, like you said, when we look at the '80s, of course, going back to K-Day Radio. When we look at Ice-T, who dropped Ron Page in '86, of course, NWA and the Posse would drop their, you know, their compilation album, rather, you know, Arabian Prince, all those guys, and of course, Straight Outta Compton would come 2 years later in '88. But the Bay Area, of course, really started, arguably, you could say, the impetus for the California scene because, of course, Too Short's first albums. And it's crazy because I actually have that on cassette. His first 2 records, it was released on 75 Girls Records, for those who know that history. Right. So you really got the foundation of, because if anybody tells you, people we know, we talk to, interview, on air, off air, they'll tell you the Bay is one word: hustle.
Oh yeah,
and it's reflected in that music heavy in terms of how they get down. In terms of when you hear it, you hear the passion, you hear the drive. It's all about surviving, mobbing by any means. To the trained ear who understands the difference between Northern California and Southern California hip hop, which are both equally great, you're going to notice the difference between the sounds. And you're going to notice the difference between subject matter. Bay Area music is more concentrated on more of the hustle / what they would call the mob sound, where you got Southern California is more of the gang culture, street culture. Right. But both equally tell a story from the individuals that are from, you know, their stomping grounds or the turf of where they grew. When you came up, Chad, and just really, what was the introductions to you in terms of really like where you knew this is what you wanted to do, and as you grew with it, what did you learn more and more as you immersed yourself in the culture of hip-hop in terms of the art of it and what it meant to really be a dope artist?
I mean, I got introduced to, you know, the West Coast music scene, you know, with Ice-T, NWA, DOC, and Too Short. Like, I can remember being in middle school and doing a talent show, and I did the DOC's, you know, the Formula record, because that's what was big, that was coming out, you know, out then. And even before that, though, I mean, I had like Heavy D, Public Enemy, like all those guys, and I just fell in love with hip hop and the music and the culture and just, you know, everything that was going on. You know, when I started doing the interviews, you know, that was kind of just me being curious, right? And because at that time, like in 2006, 2007, you know, the Dangerous Crew had kind of disbanded. You know, Too Short, you know, in Atlanta doing a lot of stuff with Lil Jon. And I just always wondered what happened with these guys. Like, what happened to Ant Banks? What happened to Shorty B and Pee Wee and the whole crew and Goldie and all them? So it was really just being a fan, you know, of those guys and what they had done. So I searched that out. And in doing those interviews and making those connections and building that rapport with a lot of them, you know, it was an amazing experience to be able to, you know, to talk to those guys, because these are guys that, you know, obviously I grew up listening to. The first Too Short record I heard was the Short Dogs in the House record, and I had a buddy of mine pull up. Yeah, a buddy of mine pulled up in a white like Geo Metro little hatchback. And I heard him coming from like a mile away, right? And I'm like, man, who's this dude? And he pulls up, and it's my buddy, and he's playing the new Too Short Dogs in the House, and he shouts out Louisville in the title track, and I was like, man, that's dope, you know. So I went out, got the Short Dogs in the House tape, got Born to Mac, got Life Is. And over the years, you know, I was able to find the original 75 Girls tape, so I got all those. And, man, just kind of took off with it. It's hip-hop to me is something that, I don't even know if I could put it into words. Like, what hip-hop did for me growing up and coming up, not just Too Short, not just Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, but like X-Clan, Public Enemy, and Chuck D, the things that they were talking about, you know, just really resonated with me, and it's been with me ever since. You know, I still enjoy today's hip hop, but man, I'm an '80s and '90s kid, you know, and I still go back and listen to those records because they're so well crafted. You know what I mean? Like, you got the Dr. Dre's and the Ant Banks, but you got, like you guys mentioned, Mike Mosley and Rick Rock and E.A. Ski. You know, you got Daz Dillinger. Like, you got all these dudes out there that just, you know, really, really laid it down and, you know, and set it off. And that's just always stuck with me.
And I want to add on, too, I said this yesterday on the Facebook post. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I also want to add on JT, the Bigger Figure, because before Tubi, there was Trap Flicks. He brought the imprint of the ghetto homemade hood movies, you know what I'm saying? So Trap Flicks was the original Tubi back then.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and to watch the Bay movement really go crazy, because it's always considered the four Godfathers, which is, of course, Too Short, E40, Mac Dre, and Richie Rich.
What
when
about?
You look at
I was going to ask you guys too. We forgot one more name, man. We forgot to mention Spice One.
Yeah, we can't. I mean, yeah, and you know, Spice One came later because Short put him on. You know,
right.
So that was in '91 when his first album came out, and his first album. I mean, that was. One thing about Short, Chad, that we noticed is Short was always looking out for his guys in terms of really trying to put them in a position to win. And when we look at the 90s era when the Bay, because L.A. pretty much had kicked that door down. So between Compton, Los Angeles, it was, you figure between the years 1986 and 1993, we have The Chronic. We have, Born and Raised in Compton. We have, the Trifling album. We have Act a Fool. I'm just naming the records. The album, we have Never Again. We got Death Certificate. We got America's Most Wanted. We got, Compton's Most Wanted, Straight Checking Them. All these, and the Bay is like still, it's there, but then when in the early 90s, this is when you have like E40 and then one coming along in the process. So you got E40, and all those guys, Too Short is still making music at the time. So we're seeing this whole coalescence of the California sound really come in, especially from both sides of it. In terms of what you saw as the culture progressed, Chad, and of course Hammer. We can't forget Hammer because Hammer was part of that movement as well. He would bring in Oaktown 357, all of them. When you look at the time of the music, is what you said, it was just different. What do you think it was in terms of the creative aspect, the writing maturity, the overall development of the artist that contributed to those classics from all those artists?
Honestly, I think it was just the originality. Like everybody just wanted to be. At that time, they wanted to be different. They didn't want to be like anybody else. Today you got a lot of people that want to be like everybody else. So that's why when you turn on the radio, everything you hear sounds almost exactly the same. But like in your time frame, like what you're saying, from like 88 to like 93, 94, 95, like, everybody you just mentioned, in that whole little 5, 6, 7, 8 year time period, you had MC Hammer with all the dancing, and the up-tempo stuff, and then you had, Too Short, Ant Banks and those guys, with the slow roll funk. You had Mac Dre doing his thing. You had Dre and Snoop with the G-Funk. You had Compton's Most Wanted. Spice One, doing his whole thing. Like everybody had their own unique sound, unique approach to what they were doing, and I think that's what really showed through, and really made the West Coast, stand out. When you listen to a Dre record and you listen to like an Ant Banks record, an Ant Banks produced record, they sound totally different, but they're both equally great, equally magnificent. When you hear an EA Ski beat and you hear a Warren G beat, they're both dope, but they don't sound alike. Like they sound completely different. And I think that's one of the main things that helped bring them to the forefront, and the fact that it's California. Everybody wants to know what it's like in Cali, and I remember growing up. You're listening to these songs, you're like, damn, like LA's like that. And then you listen to something coming out of the Bay, it's like, damn, the Bay's like that,
Yeah, we were the same way, looking at it from outsiders. Looking at it from outsiders in, we was there, we were having the same mindset now. Probably from the NWA, CMW stage, no lie. They made it like it was scary to come out of Cal. You know what I'm saying? We seen Colors, we seen Deep Cover, we seen all this shit. But then, I think around the mid-90s, like, when the happier records start coming out, like when Battle Cat and Quick and all of them, made us a little more relaxed. We were like, okay, it's more like palm trees and beautiful weather and gorgeous women and black TV.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
We can come out, we can go out there now.
Right, yeah.
Yep. And before we get ahead of ourselves, y'all, we can't, we'd be remiss if we don't mention Above the Laws. Shout out to Big Hutch, man. Chaos, KMG, you know, the whole crew, man. I mean, because you figure Hutch really laid down the foundation of what would become G-Funk. You know, Dre will tell you himself that Hutch was the one that kind of, you know, tutored him and helped fine-tune his musical ear for what Dre would end up becoming.
Yeah, it's
so
Hutch, Total Chaos, rest in peace to my homeboy Laylaw.
Laylaw, man.
You know, Cocaine, all of them. You know, they put in some real work, and they didn't always get the recognition for it, but they put in a lot of the groundwork for the whole G-Funk, you know, pioneering that whole sound. You know, Dre gets a lot of credit for it, and Dre obviously did his thing with it. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
But for Hutch and the guys in Above the Law who have had the foresight or the talent and whatever you want to call it to blend those elements together that created G-Funk, I mean, you got to give props to them. You have to. You can't forget them. You know what I mean? And Laylaw will go on to produce records for Tupac. You know, he did you know, the California Love. You know, he did I can't think the name of the song now. But he had another one for Tupac, but you know, Laylaw was a huge backbone for a lot of that stuff that came out of the West like that. So rest in peace, Laylaw.
Yeah, man. That was one individual. It was. That's one individual we regret that we didn't have a chance to get on the show that we would have really loved to have had. In terms of also being an accomplished blogger as well, Chad, what did you find in terms of not only interviewing these people, but also writing about them as well? Because it's a totally different type of discipline and a more intimate aspect of it when you're actually putting pen to paper, figuratively speaking, or keys to screen in terms of typing, and really telling the story in terms of what you're trying to convey to the audience. Because your shit is like mad diverse in terms of the array of people that you've written about. You wrote about NB Nell, man. I mean, he's like one of the young guns coming out of the Northern California section. Was it Richmond? I think it's Richmond he's from. Is it Stockton or Richmond?
Stockton, yeah.
Stockton. You know, Muddy Boy Nell, and he has like been blazing it for the past couple of years. You know,
right.
I mean, tell us about that in terms of getting into the writing aspects of it and how you find, you know, these young guns before they really get known, or getting, you know, writing about them when they're really beginning to blaze up.
You know, I just for what I do, you know, I don't try to mimic or copy, you know, anything else that's going on. I mean, obviously there's going to be some, you know, some stories or some articles that are going to be, you know, organic news, you know, that's just kind of out there. But, you know, I really try to find the stuff that, you know, these other websites or platforms are not reporting on. You know what I mean? It's easy to do the clickbait thing and just run up your views and you know, and do all that kind of stuff. And that's not why I do it. You know, I want to give, you know, the spotlight, and I want to shine that light on, you know, what interests me and what I'm a fan of, you know. So, you know, a lot of stuff that a lot of these, you know, artists do or put out, a lot of it will fly under the radar unless there's some kind of, you know, clickbait story that somebody can attach it to. And I'm just not a fan of that. So I try to find, you know, a different perspective with what I write about. That's not the common perspective that's, you know, that's out there on some of these other platforms. And, you know, as far as like some of these new guys that are coming out, like you just mentioned, MB Nell and all them, it's not so much that I'm finding them, but they're finding me. And, you know, they'll hit my inbox with something, or, you know, they'll reach out to me, with a video or a song that they've got or whatever, and I like it. And my platform's not huge. My platform's not this grandiose top media site or whatever, but I've been getting a lot of love and a lot of support from a lot of guys. Like Snoop has reposted some of my stuff. Snoop Dogg, Battle Cat, Fred Wreck, Too Short, just a lot of different, guys, Cocaine, a lot of these people, I've been getting a lot of support and a lot of love for what I'm doing, and these guys, they're reaching out to me, and I'm just playing my small part in helping them achieve, what it is they're trying to do. They're trying to get their videos out, they're trying to get their music out, get it seen, get it heard. If I can help in some small way, that's what I'm doing. Maybe part of that is derived from when I used to do publicity and PR, and maybe I'm coming from that kind of perspective with it, but that's just what I do. I'm not into the whole clickbait thing. I try not to do things that stir up, beef between people. It's for me, it's about the music, and just putting the love back out there, for these artists and for these producers, and that's what I do.
Yeah, that's like a real challenge for a lot of up and coming content creators now, because there's many like you that have knowledge of what these guys do in regards to their contributions to the culture, but the challenge is making it interesting, making it juicy so where people can click in, and that's why they got to put like extra on the titles, even though it may make an artist feel a sort of way, but they looking at it like, man, I got to get on, I got to get this clips, I got to get my article, get my interview out there, not knowing what it could really bring and for future reference, because at the end of the day, these guys are street guys. So now you bring in a different type of funk. Like, yeah, you getting the views, but it ain't really worth it at the end. Because we seen that as proof with the vibe issue. Like with the vibe issue, when they put East versus West without really putting like a context to it.
Right. Yeah, and that's those are the kinds of things I try to stay away from. If the artist themselves is like if I'm doing an interview or something like that, and they put that out there, then that's for them to do that. That's not for me to do that, and I'm not going to stir that kind of stuff up. And I don't do what I do, for all the clickbait and the salacious headlines and things like that. I try to keep it very simple. And like I said, I like to write about things that interest me and that I'm a fan of. And hopefully that translates, out for those artists and those producers. And, some of my articles have been, cited, in books. Some of my interviews have been, cited in books as well. Other platforms have credited, the news from me or an article or an interview that I did. They've highlighted that, on their sites as well. So, I think what I do has been successful for me in terms of what my expectations are, and that's really all I'm in it for. Is just like I said, writing about what I'm interested in.
Now, it's no small feat that you have legends going out looking for you, because that means they respect you as a journalist and they trust your platform, because in so many aspects of it, promotion is everything. You talked about you used to do A&R promotion, which I did not know until you just told us. So we talked prior to, King, yourself and myself. We talked prior to this. So please tell us a little bit about that promotion, the promotions that you used to do and how you got into that. Because we here for all of it. Because we got some questions about that too.
That's just something that just kind of fell into my lap, I guess. Kind of organically. doing the interviews and things like that because, my interview's been published, obviously WCNN, Hip Hop DX, Ambrosia, All Hip Hop, in places like that. But, the PR aspect really just, it just happened kind of organically. I couldn't even tell you what the first, real kind of project or whatever that I did with that because it everything just seemed to kind of flow, into each other. But I've handled, some PR for, like EA Ski. I broke the record that he did with Ice Cube called Please. I think that was released back in like 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did Rest in Peace to MC Breed. Right before he passed away, we were talking. He wanted me to handle, his PR going forward because I'd gotten him on TMZ. For at the time, he was going through his kidney issues and stuff like that, and collapsed on the basketball court. So, unfortunately, I got the last interview that he ever did. I was able to, get that last interview, and then he passed away about a month later. But he was super excited, about this new project that he was working on, and being on TMZ, super excited about that. And he wanted to continue working with me, and unfortunately, he passed away before we could do anything else. But I've done stuff like that. I was actually handling a lot of the PR for the Wide Awake Entertainment Death Row Records brand back when Wide Awake, bought the rights to Death Row. So I was handling the projects for OFTB, the Crooked Eye project that came out, Sam Snead, LBC Crew, and all those guys. Handled that with John Payne over there. For a few years doing that, actually had a distribution deal through the Wide Awake Death Row thing as well. Didn't really do too much, didn't get a chance to do too much with that, but had the distribution deal, if I needed it, if I wanted to exercise it. But, handle a lot of different projects. I work with Chris the Glove Taylor, multi-platinum producer out of L.A., worked with Dre, worked with King T and Nas, handled PR for Sir Jinx, legendary producer for Ice Cube and Exhibit, and MC Ren, obviously, NWA. Getting them on different platforms and facilitating different, different media looks for them. Chris the Glove, Sir Jinx, and MC Ren, they were on a documentary through the BBC that was hosted by Sharon Osbourne. I was able to get them on that. Done a lot of work with the DOC over the years. Got him into Playboy magazine for an award-winning article in their 2013 issue. Just a lot of different media opportunities that were presented to me, or that I went out and facilitated for some of these guys, and it's been a blessing, and it's been an amazing ride, to have done those things,
Yeah,
and we talking about straight promotions. We talking about straight promotions, man. Like going to the offices and going to the radio shows, getting the backstage access to the concerts. Promotional game is so much easier now than it was then. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
What do artists have to understand, Chad, about in terms of how to properly get promotion? Because we see in this day and time, in an automated age, that everybody wants to do shenanigans instead of having real substance, and they want to be slapstick as opposed to serious. But as we've learned, because Because King used to do this himself, so he knows in terms of writing write-ups for artists and reviews, you as well as promotions, because both of y'all come from that journalism aspect of it. What do artists have to understand about the aspect of what it means to have yourself properly branded and to make sure you have the right people working in tandem with you to ensure that you get to these right outlets?
Well, I think you just said it right there. I mean, you got to surround yourself with people who have, your best interests, in mind, and people that can help you get to where you want to get to. And like you said, a lot of people use shenanigans and gimmicks, to get, certain views or certain looks. And, I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, because I think just throughout history of just entertainment and music, like people have done certain things to stay relevant or to become relevant by utilizing gimmicks or certain shenanigans, like you said, to do. But in my experience, and especially with working with some of the people that I have, and a lot of people that I've worked with were already, established artists, kind of in the industry, and maybe some of them were, hadn't, had that spotlight on them for a little while or something like that. But, it's really about staying the course. If you're just true to yourself and true to what you're doing, I think doors can open for you, and I think good things will happen. I don't want to say that gimmicks are bad, but I don't want to necessarily say that they're good either. I guess it just really depends on what it is that you're doing. I've had guys that, they shut down the freeway out in L.A. and put on a show just right there in the middle of L.A. traffic. They just shut the whole freeway down. And that was a way for them to get a little bit of attention. So it's just I think it's like, kind of like what you said. It's just, get a team around you that has your best interests at heart. And just, if it's music, just make good music, and make music that you want to make. Don't make music because it's the hot thing that's selling right now. Make your thing, and stay that course.
Yeah. And that's important because you really have to understand your vision of it. Now, this is where it gets dicey in terms of promotions, because when you have shows, especially for our platform, some artists, we're not going to mention no names on this show because that ain't what we do, but we've had some artists who thought that we were too small in terms of maybe what they felt was a platform for them, which is fine with us because we've had legends on our show, which we're going to beat our chest about, but you have some people that think that certain platforms are not big or it's not enough of an audience. How important is it for an artist to reach out to every market in terms of getting on as many platforms as they can to get their name out there?
I think you're doing yourself a disservice if that's the outlook, is that, if a platform or an outlet reaches out to you and the first thing you think of is, well, how big are they? I think you're doing yourself a disservice because in my opinion, for most things, any publicity is good publicity. Any exposure you can get is good exposure, whether you're an up-and-coming artist or whether you're an established artist. And that's just my opinion. I've been turned down, from people before, especially like with my podcast, about wanting to come up on the podcast because, well, what kind of numbers are you getting, and how many listenership do you have, and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm like, if you got to ask me all those questions, then you're not who I want to have on my show. You know what I mean? So it kind of goes hand in hand, because then, once your show or once your platform grows, and which has happened to me, that same artist that turned you down is turning around and wanting you to have them on their show.
You never know
and so
who's going to get big.
It's kind of funny when the tables turn like that,
And they do turn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's
like. And it's the funny thing with us. I ain't mean to cut you off, T-Max, but I ain't want to lose my train of thought. But the funny thing about us is, when we'll pitch it to them, and these managers, they'll look at us first of all, and they be like, "Well, this show may be a little bit too small for you. How much is the budget?" So I was like, "Okay, so this is the new part of the game, I guess." So I just left it at that. So this is how Monkey See, Monkey Do his business is. We start posting up photos of who we met, artists we kicked it with, legends that gave us shout-outs on the show. I just started posting that up on Instagram. And I think what happened was we booked one artist. I don't know if it was Cassidy. I don't know if it was him, but it was Cassidy, and then we had Billy Danz afterwards. I mean, my timing could be a little bit off. That same manager came through like, "Oh, man, I didn't know you knew all these people like that. Let's work." I said, "I'm good."
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
I'm good.
Yeah. Now we got to ask you this too, Chad, because this has happened to us. Have you ever had somebody try to hit you talking about you had to pay them to bring them on?
I think that has only happened to me one time. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it's just, it goes the way it should go. There's been that
right.
I think it's just been the one time where somebody said, that they wanted me to pay them to have them on my show, and I didn't do that. And I still haven't interviewed that person. But, everybody else that I've ever interviewed, like that's never been an issue. And I've interviewed, a lot of people. I'm not one that likes to go out and toot my own horn, but sometimes you just gotta toot that motherfucker, And
that's true.
So I've done interviews with Chuck D and Too Short, Fred Reck, EA Ski, Ice Cube, Ant Banks. Man, it's just been a lot. MC Ren, Sir Jinx, just a bunch of people. And so, when somebody that I reach out to, responds that way, I don't get negative about it or anything, but I just politely decline. Like, that's not what I'm in this for. You know what I mean? But thankfully, I haven't really, come across, that type of issue.
Yeah. Pretty much we think also too, that kind of cheapens the journalistic integrity of it because,
sure.
Me and my brother, we've talked about this many a time off air about, we keep reiterating this on Off the Cuff. We're never going to blast nobody in terms of, situations that may not have been the best. We don't do that on this show, but we do use it as a reference point because there was a very well-known artist last year who we reached out to and his manager, and it took about pretty much, this was over a period of about 2-3 weeks we were talking. So the manager gets back with us, because I was running point, as King said, I'd be the boots on the ground, just like he'd be, the Paul Heyman of this thing, the Al Heyman, so, we make the money moves in terms of making it happen. So anyway, I digress. But anyway, we're talking to this individual. I'm talking to him primarily. So he says that he'll bring the artist on, but we got to pay because I was telling him, because this is what we have learned for all aspiring podcasters out there. You always want to make it very, very clear in terms of how you do things. That way, if some fuckery does come up, it ain't your fault. Why? because you explained everything to them from top to bottom, to the nook and cranny, to the rooter to the tutor, to the nuts and bolts. You've laid out everything.
Right.
Don't want to get too long-winded, but, basically what I told him this was a phone interview. Because I guess, and I told him this earlier, I think the weed and kush might have got to him too much. Anyway, so I'm telling him he doesn't have to, it's not a traveling show, because for some reason, somewhere along the line, he thought this was a traveling. I'm like, no, he's just going to call in and we just go from there. So then he says, well, he wants to be paid. Now, we didn't even get to the numbers part about how much he wants to be paid. So he's like, and also, too, that he's going to be doing a show that night, so he may only give us an hour. So I get back to King. I'm going to let King carry the rest of this because I'm going to let King say what he had to say after I got back with him about it. Go ahead, bro.
Oh, y'all know what we're talking about, man. I'm like, hold up. I had to read the room, first of all. And me being the type of guy, I'm like, let me read the book. Let me read the Billboard chart. Let me read when the last time you've been outside.
Yeah.
Let me read what your last video did for you to make these demands to us. Let me read your features. Like, what are we doing here to make that type of charge on us? Like, if anything, from the way we're looking at it, I'm like, brother, you could use all type of press you can get. You don't have nothing out there. Last time we seen you popping off 50 and Kanye were going at it, the sales off. You know what I'm saying? That was 2007.
Right.
Street DVDs were popping when you was hot. So I had to hold up, man. Let me clear this up again. I had to cut the music off of this. You tell me this guy, he ain't been outside in almost 10 years and he's going to charge us for an interview? And then going to dictate what to talk about? Hell no. No.
Right.
This guy's crazy.
He's not doing that. Yeah, and it was like, okay, so
I'm sorry.
This is the
I had to hit him with this, man.
Mm-hmm.
I had to hit him with this, man. No.
And there's a reason, because this has happened to us a few times now. For those that don't understand our principle on this show, because we haven't really said it in full, so we're going to give this in explicit detail why we don't go that route. What I just said earlier about it compromises and corrupts the artistic and journalistic integrity of what we do. But this is also something as well. Situation where it's more of a contrived and even somewhat of a coerced action. See, for someone to do an interview, it shouldn't be coerced. Somebody should want to come on just because they want to do it, because that's when it's the best content, when it's genuine and people really, really, really fuck with your shit. But in the extreme nuclear option case, if we would even entertain paying somebody, we're going to dictate the terms in terms of you can't run from nothing we ask.
Right.
Oh yeah, you gotta put it.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I told my partner, I was like, man, look, okay, you wanted to promote the show. You're gonna have to give us. We're going to set up the flyer. You're going to have to promote the show every day. We're going to need a drop, a video drop, a radio drop, whatever you want to do. You got to be there on time. No question it could go unanswered. We ain't playing that type of game.
No.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Thankfully,
and I was like, okay, we're going to do business. We're going to do business.
Thankfully for me, I've never really had to go through that. I guess I've just been kind of blessed in that way that's never come across my plate except for the one time. Most of the time, it's if I reach out to them, it's the favor or whatever is usually returned, or which is also the case. a lot of them have reached out to me about, wanting to do an interview or come up on the podcast or something like that. So, the whole paying thing for all that, they can miss me with that.
And it's ironic too, y'all, because when this particular artist that we're talking about, you look on his IG and his Facebook like he living large, like he doing it, like that money, whatever money he made back in the day, like he's still eating off of it. But also too, it's like that tells you it can be smoke and mirrors. Now, we can name the people that we've had on the show that are legends, and God bless them, and we love them so much for coming on. Big Hutch, we've had him twice. Cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out DJ Yella, the legend of NWA. We had him on the show.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We've had Sir James. We've had Billy Dance. We've had Mike Geronimo. We've had Cassidy. We've had the late, great Louis Rankin. We've had the late, great Badass. We've had the late, great G.I. Joe. We ain't paid none of these people, and we had great interviews with them.
Yeah.
And
that just goes back to what I was saying earlier. Just stay true to what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? And good things will always happen. What episode are you guys on now?
We're on, what's this, King? How many shows is this we got now, King? About, 500 and, we're right at about 540 now?
Yeah, so, you know what I'm saying? Like, y'all are doing your thing. So, that something like that I wouldn't even pay attention to because, you guys are obviously, doing your thing and have been doing it. You know what I mean? So, like I said earlier, you just got to stay true to what you're doing and the blessings will happen,
And we are blessed indeed. We cannot complain. Now, Chad,
No
in terms of being a journalist, how do you feel now about the transition from print media to digital in terms of where the magazines are not as prevalent as they once were, albeit not extinct, but not necessarily the priority? I'm a book nerd. King is a book nerd. We're both book nerds. So we really treasure the art of the written word and the print media. Of course, like XXL. Shout out to John Blasingame, founder of Word Up Magazine, and so many other titles as well, publications. How do you feel about how it has changed now in terms of how articles, especially with you being a writer as well, how they are disseminated through media?
Well, obviously the digital aspect has obviously changed it. Made it a lot easier. Anybody can get a website, anybody can get a podcast. It's just like sometimes with music right now, like anybody can make a beat, because it's been made so easy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. XXL, The Source, those magazines and those platforms. I can remember, going to bookstores, whatever, and finding the latest XXL, finding the latest Source, finding the latest Word Up magazine, whatever it was. So I missed that aspect of, just like with CDs and the music going digital. It's like, yeah, it's so easy. You just pull out your phone and you got an app, boom, you got the next, you got this album or you got this song. I'm so physical with stuff like that. Like I like the physical media. Like I like the magazines. I like and enjoyed and still reminisce because I can still remember when I went and picked up, Tupac's All Eyes on Me. I can still remember when I went up and picked out, Shorty the Pimp, every Tuesday, hitting the record stores. So
yeah, man.
While it's made it easier, I'm not going to necessarily say that it's made it better, but it's definitely made it easier for people to do the things like that I do or that you guys were doing. I think they can and I think they are coexisting, both the physical aspect and the digital aspect as well. So, and for me, for what I do, that digital is helpful. You know, I've got my website, I've got my podcast, and I've been able to do, you know, some pretty big things with that.
Yeah. And when we think about it, too, from that level of how the digital game goes, because this is something that a lot of people don't always understand in that aspect, because the digital does not always entail every album being out there, because there's a lot of records that are not even on digital outlets.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where, you know, and eBay has just become like, oh, God, eBay has just become the Wild West, because when you're looking at how some of those records are in terms of some of those records that are out of print and how much they're going for, and you can't even find them on digital outlets. I mean, hell, you've had songs pulled off digital outlets. I remember some years ago, shout out to our Asian brothers and sisters, you know, when the Asian hate thing was really big in terms of when it was really getting a lot of media attention. You know, of course, on, you know, YG's first album, My Crazy Life, where he had that song, Meet the Flockers. And he has that line about, you know, Asians getting robbed. They pulled that song off iTunes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, when Ice Cube did, you know, No Vaseline, when he had the line, because you let a Jew break up my crew, they bleeped you out.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was like, it was nuts.
Better get those physicals.
And this is my thing.
Yeah.
This is my thing about the digital world. You know, when you talk about Apple Music and Spotify and stuff like that, the thing that I miss is, you know, because you can go and get the album, right? You can go and pick up, you know, Death Certificate. You can go and pick up, you know, Straight Outta Compton. You can go and pick up, you know, the Get In Where You Fit In, you know, whatever, right? But what I miss are the singles that would have the remixes.
Yeah.
Right? So you would have whatever
the maxi
song.
singles.
Yeah. So you would have whatever song, right? You would have Too Short's I'm a Player. But they got a whole other version of that song on the single, like the cassette or the maxi, you know, the maxi CD single that came out. You know, they'd have that. They had, you know, all these different remixes. You can't find those remixes. Like, I would love, you know, with having Apple Music or Spotify, to be able to just go and boom, here's this remix and listen to the remixes. You know, you don't have that. You know, Ant Banks had a dope ass remix of Parlaying, but the only way you can hear it is on the vinyl. You know, or if you take, you know, if you have like the little conversion thing where you can take vinyl and put it as an MP3, but then you got to have a separate, you know, app on your phone to play it. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta kind of do that work to listen to those remixes. You know, I wish that these labels or the artists, you know, especially if they control their catalog, you know, if they would bust those out and put them on, you know, make them available, you know, on the Apple Music and Spotify's or, you know, whatever the platform is. That's what I miss. Because I remember going to the record stores, man, and you know, I couldn't wait to see what the new singles and all that came out, because I knew they was probably either going to have like a remix or, you know, they was going to have some kind of B-side that, you know, wasn't even on the album. It was just a song that was just, you know, an unreleased song, you know, but you can't find those gems unless you already had, you know, the physicals, which, you know, with a lot of stuff that I listen to, I've got all the physical, either CDs or tapes or whatever, but yeah, that's what I wish would happen with the digital world. And actually, you know, there's a lot of dope soundtracks that aren't available on digital. You know what I'm saying? There was the Show soundtrack that had the song by Tupac, On My Block, and like Bone Thugs and Harmony, Everyday Thing.
One of the greatest soundtracks ever.
Yeah, it's not. I can't find it nowhere. You know what I'm saying? The Dangerous Ground, the Ice Cube movie. That was a dope soundtrack. You had Too Short, Underground Kings, Ice Cube had a record on there. I think Mac 10 had a record on there. Like, that was a dope soundtrack, but you can't find it.
Menace to Society. I mean, when you look at I mean, it's like, it's, oh God, I mean, and that's one thing too, y'all, that I missed in terms of hip hop, because when we look at the movies back in the day, even if it wasn't necessarily a quote unquote black movie, you would still have some hip hop, like The Corruptor back in the day with Mark Wahlberg and Chow Yun-Fat. And that soundtrack was, was not necessarily a black movie. The movie was not a black movie, but I mean, God, the soundtrack was just, whoa. I mean,
and some of these big soundtracks are not available, and you can't enjoy that, that music unless you already had that CD from back in the day, and you like I said, you can convert it over to MP3 and use a special player, music player app on your phone to play it, So I wish, especially with a lot of the game now being much more independent, and the artists have much more say as to what they do with their music. Now I wish they'd go and put some of these soundtracks, remixes, or these these B-side songs that you can't find nowhere.
Shout out to Cormega, because I hit him on IG. Because, of course, a couple of years ago, he for 2001 and 2002, when The Realness and The True Meaning were released, and a couple of years ago, he did the 20-year anniversary for both of those albums. And, of course, The Realness 2 is just fucking bananas. I've been staying in that dude's inbox because I'm like, dude, when do we get a physical? When do we get a physical? Are we going to get a physical? He's like, okay. But when you look at Mega with what he did on the independent scale when he dropped those albums, because for a minute on eBay, the shit was insane in terms of those CD prices, and they're still kind of high depending on it. The monetary value has gone down because those, even in a small scale, the cassettes are back in circulation. And I think he did a vinyl re-release as well. But some of those joints, like in the Legal Hustle joint he did, the album was, it's depending on where you go up there, it's you can get a good price for it. Even with the Testament, which I have the original, and I have the one that was eventually released. But it's like some of that shit, man, is like it's just a lot. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot. I mean, and that's where you're looking at like how much a lot of this stuff goes for.
Right.
But you don't really know how good you got it in terms of those physicals until you go online and then you see how much they're worth. And even the magazines. Some of those old source magazines, I was looking at one from 1991. I think somebody's selling that one for $500.
Oh wow!
I want to say it may be the Luke issue from 1991, I believe.
Okay.
And but a lot of that stuff now is becoming valuable, especially because as we've seen the culture progress over the years, there has been a real, I don't want to say resurgence because I don't think it ever died, but it's like an appreciation. There's a reappraisal of what people may have had as just kind of a passé thing, but then they find out the magazines, the albums, these are like real tangible testaments to an era of some of the best music that was released. Like with King T's albums, you can't even find his albums anymore because they're out of print. And some of those albums on eBay are going for like $70, $90, $100.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, when you talk, have you ever talked to the artists, Chad, about how they feel about some of those albums going out there on the secondary market, and about how some of those went out of print, and how many of them actually own their masters to their records?
I've never really talked with any of them about that. I mean, I know, there's just in some private conversations. You know,
right.
We've talked about, you know, certain albums or whatever, you know, suddenly being, you know, $300 or, you know, $200 or something like that because it's out of print. But you know, as far as, you know, if they own their masters and do this and that, I've never really gotten involved in that conversation with them because in my mind, that's not my business. You know what I'm saying? If they
Understood.
If they want to know it, you know, if they want to own their masters, cool. If they want to put the stuff out, cool. Or if they just want to have their masters and not do anything with it, you know, that's cool. You know, that's their work. That's their their property to do whatever they want with. So, I've asked them, you know, certain people maybe questions about, you know, maybe why this certain album or this certain song isn't available, you know, digitally. But again, you know, they'll just tell me, you know, it's, you know, something with the labels. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean that's the extent of that. You know, I was a big fan of the Lil Bay Oakland duo Bad Influence, which was Rappin' Ron and then Diddley Dog, that was down with Too Short and Dangerous Crew and all that stuff. And I noticed that their record, their CD, the Bad Influence CD, I think it was either on eBay or Discogs or something like that, but it was sitting at like, you know, $200, $300. You know what I mean? And that, you know, and they're a group that, you know, unfortunately didn't get to, you know, to see, you know, their, you know, what they were doing, you know, really blossom. You know what I'm saying? They were still very much a, you know, like a localized, you know, group at the time. You know, I think they were becoming, you know, a little bit more before Rappin' Ron passed away. Rest in peace to Ron, who coincidentally is also in my top 5, you know, greatest rappers. But, you know, to see that their record is worth that much, you know, that's crazy because, you know, I wasn't, I guess, aware that maybe they had that big of a following yet. You know, I knew that they were getting there and they were growing, obviously because, you know, they were associated with Too Short and Ant Banks and that group, you know, that was, you know, doing their thing. But, you know, when I saw that, I was like, man, that's crazy. You know, $200 for their CD. You know, that, you know, and I look at some of these other CDs out there that are, you know, like you're saying, like King T and all that's out of print. Crazy that they're worth $200 or $300, and I have all those CDs. You know, so yeah, that's crazy to see that.
It's wild because I was actually looking at E40's album, The Click Down and Dirty. Now, for those that know, there are 2 versions of that record. Because the original Down and Dirty, I think, has like 18, 19 tracks. But the thing was, this is the kicker. This is the Down and Dirty album that was released independently before they got their distribution deal with Jive in 1995. Or was it 93?
Okay, yeah.
So the one that was put out on the label on Jive was, when they did their distribution deal, is a totally different album than the one that they put out originally. Because if you were not out in the Bay catching them, slanging them tapes back in the day, I think I saw the original Click Down and Dirty album on cassette. I think it was going for like $70.
Wow.
And I think the CD was going for like $200.
Yeah.
Because I know the Mailman.
Yeah, that's the bad part.
Original.
Yeah, that's the only bad part about it. That's the only thing bad about with those albums going like that. Now, keep in mind, when these guys were creating the art, they didn't really think about business. There was more so, a lot of them coming up, they didn't really know what they was doing. They were just creating this thing as it went because, you know, they was looking at rap as a fad, and it was probably going to be going in a couple of years. Little did they know that it was going to make an impact like it did, so they probably focused more so on creativity and the art and less on the business side. And unfortunately, this is what the results is now, because now you see these albums going on sale and they're not getting a piece of it. Now, you probably got some artists that handle their business real well and they distributed their albums for almost like $200 to $300, and they get all the money. But it's unfortunate that a lot of people that contribute heavily to the art can't really eat off of it. So that's the good thing about the information age today.
Right. I don't think there's any artist that capitalize as much off of it in the information age in terms of really finding his audience grassroots than Nipsey Hussle. Rest in peace. It is still a urban legend. Well, not even urban because it really happened. It's still a legend with the Crenshaw mixtape because when his label deal with Sony didn't work out, this dude hit the block and was like, I'm going to do it myself. And when you have Jay-Z buy 100 copies of your album just because he's recognizing your grind and appreciates your hustle with it, that's major. And that's still like one of the greatest hand-to-hands I've ever seen. You know, we were amazed. And it's like, damn near, 10, 12 years ago? Shout out to Mike and Keys, 1500 or nothing. All those guys who were working on those early projects with Nip. I mean, they were doing something at the time, all money in. It's still amazing to think about, y'all, because Nip saw something in terms of the market where he reached directly to the people, and they rocked with him. From your public relations experience with Chad, how important is it for an artist to really get that love from their hometown? What do artists have to understand in terms of, you know, really, really, really making music that is going to reach the masses outside of it?
I think it's pretty important to have your hometown behind you. You know, if your hometown don't even support you, how are you gonna get anybody else to support you? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know it can happen, but I'm just thinking, you know, for me, I think it's really important for your hometown and the people in your hometown to support you. I mean, look at, you know, all you gotta do is look at history with that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, NWA, you know, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg with Long Beach, Dre and NWA with Compton, you know, Compton's Most Wanted with Compton, DJ Quick, same thing, you know, E40 with Vallejo, same thing, you know, Too Short in Oakland, same thing, like where they're from and their cities, you know, Nelly, you know, St. Louis, you know what I mean?
Right.
You know, Outkast, you know, down there in Atlanta, Scarface with Houston, you know, the Ghetto Boys, like, you know, your city, you know, that support, you know, I think is really important. You know, I know people can make it without it, but you know, for me, my experience and what I've seen and what I've heard, you know, having your city behind you is big, real big. So I think a lot of artists, you know, need to embrace that and embrace their communities and be a part of their communities and you know, and get that support from them, definitely.
Yeah, and artists have to understand this too, y'all. There's no meritocracy in terms of where you come from that you're automatically going to be liked just because you come from there. Because the thing is, if you're really serious about it, you're trying to put your city on the map, which means you got to rep your city the right way. And your music has to be something that everybody can get behind. And I think that's what some artists, and I know this is going to be a tricky field to navigate with the minds in it. It's like with some artists, they're just okay with being local famous because they feel like as long as they have a certain celebrity in their hometown, it's like you're trying out for the NFL, and you may be great in college, but once you get to that pro level, because NFL only has 1,696 players in it, so it's the best of the best. When you're looking on an average of college players that graduate a football team between three divisions, that's roughly about maybe 3,000 or 4,000 players over those three divisions that graduate every year. So you figure less than 2% are going to make it to the league. So there is a real defined difference between who is really good and who is really, really, really great, to where their music will stand out. And not only does their immediate hood embrace it, but it gets out there. And there's a lot to this, because this is where people like yourself, this is like people where us, where we come in. If we know about you outside of your city, that means you've done something. You know, in terms of you have an audience that is taking the time to read the blogs, knows about you, and rocks with you. But if you're not getting any exposure outside of your city, it's like you're not moving anywhere with it. And it's not to diss, because I'm never going to disparage or discourage anybody from their dream. But it's also a situation where you have to be realistic about the outcome of where that dream is going to go. And music is a very finicky taste for a lot of people, like food. It's about how people will accept it. And if you don't have that palate that everybody wants to have a buffet on, you're going to be starving.
Chad.
When you look at, from your experiences, Chad, what recent artists in memory have you seen in terms of their independent hustle that you were like, wow, like this individual really has something going that's really heavy?
Oh, man. Recent history?
We got time. Yes, we got time.
I don't know, but
time.
I look at
some time left.
But I look at things. I look at things like this.
Mm-hmm.
I look at a guy like MC Breed, right? Here's a guy that until he came out, I didn't know anything about Flint, Michigan, right? And here comes MC Breed out of the Midwest, and suddenly it's MC Breed in the DSC, Flint, Michigan, ain't no future in your frontin', like all that stuff. Like it just came out of nowhere, right? So I look at it like, a guy like MC Breed is textbook for that. You know what I'm saying? Like really, really hustling and really doing what he's got to do to get his break, get his music out there, and do the damn thing, right? So if we don't have MC Breed, and this is a conversation I've had with some other people, if we don't have MC Breed coming out of Flint, Michigan, do we have a Kid Rock who would later come out and his first record was with Too Short? Like, I don't know that a lot of people know that. Like, Kid Rock first came up with Too Short. Too Short produced 2 records on Kid Rock's very first album. If we don't have MC Breed, do we have Eminem? I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's Motown, in Detroit and all that kind of stuff, but, Motown wasn't hip-hop. So MC Breed really kicked that door open for Michigan, Detroit, Flint, like that whole area up there. That's and he doesn't get, to me, he doesn't get the recognition for that. DOC putting Dallas on the map as a hip hop area, right? DOC, and then the next thing you've got Erotic D that comes out, and some of the people that came out of Dallas. You got Too Short out of Oakland. Before Too Short came out, Oakland was not on the map for hip hop. And Too Short has been doing it since 1983. Longer or as long as Ice-T was doing it in L.A. or Dr. Dre was doing his stuff with the Wrecking Crew, in L.A. Short was doing it just as long, if not longer. Rapping Forte put San Francisco on the map. Before Forte, hip-hop wise, what do we know about San Francisco? E40 with Vallejo. What do we know about Vallejo? Spice One,
that's
Hayward.
True.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So a lot of these guys, Scarface and Ghetto Boys, down in Houston, same thing. You know, as far as hip hop goes, what do we know about a lot of these cities? St. Louis with Nelly. Like, what do we know about that? You know, we knew about Compton and we knew about L.A. because of Dr. Dre and NWA, but then here comes Snoop talking about Long Beach. What do we know about Long Beach? You know, now you got Snoop out of Long Beach, you got Daz, you got RBX. Like, he brought a whole crew up out of that city. You know, so, you know, with hip-hop, especially with a lot of hip-hop, I mean, the hustle is there. And you see it with a lot of these guys that are doing it. They're putting whole cities on their backs and breaking doors down. And you gotta love to see it.
And it shows that more than anything, it shows that their dedication to work. So really, because like you said, if you got a vision and it's really a good one in terms of what you're trying to do, you're gonna make it happen. And there's nothing more gratifying. Because one thing about social media now, y'all, we got a situation where the artists, they don't have an excuse anymore in terms of back in the day. You had to go through a lot of jumping through hoops, a lot of headaches. Hoping. Yeah, a lot of headaches, hoping and praying that you would get a label. This was just to get a label meeting. And then, even then, that wasn't guaranteed that you would get a deal. But once you got the record deal, it was like you had to show them why they needed to put money into you. Mm-hmm. You have exceptions like EPMD back in the day because they were their own producer. So all they had to do was get a deal. But they never had to worry about producer money because they took care of their own, they took care of all of that themselves. So that kind of cut that cost out. But there were a lot of artists who really, they had to show why this label should invest in them. Now for a lot of artists, for better or for worse, and we always want to keep it positive, you know, you got a lot of artists who are like, okay, I'm going to get out there. Shout out to G. Perico, of course, you know, out in South Central, So Way Out Entertainment, you know, the Enterprise. He's killing it right now on that independent level. You know, Mozzie, you know, shout out to him, Free Mozzie, you know, repping 916 in Sacramento. I mean, you know, I first got hit to Mozzie around 2016. And to see what he has done in terms of what he grew from an independent artist to being signed to CMG now with Yo Gotti. But you saw these individuals that really had some hard shit, and it was like the streets loved it, and they just kept working at it. Yeah. But that's important, and artists got to understand this is hard work. This isn't going to be, you know, you just laying on your ass, throw a song on YouTube or SoundCloud and just hope that people pay attention to it. And we've seen over the years with some songs, they were kind of big for a minute, but where was the follow-up? And then these artists stated like yesterday's news on the back page. Yeah. Pretty much all the writing, because when you look at some of the aspects of journalism and the interviewing aspect, to see artists transition into the podcasting lane, like Nori with Drink Champs, and you did a piece about that. How do you feel about it with guys like him, Fat Joe? Shout out to, of course, Master Ace and his wife, you know, Lachey, you know, and pretty much all of them kind of transitioning to things outside of rap in terms of still being involved in the culture. How do you feel about that?
I think it's dope. I mean, in a word, I think it's dope. I think it's great to see these guys, you know, being able to transition, you know, into that, because these are guys that are in the culture and of the culture, instead of having people, you know, maybe outside of the culture trying to write about the culture. You know what I mean? You know, I've seen, you know, there's different journalists and different writers and stuff like that, you know, that I've seen over the years that, you know, it's trying to write about hip hop, but they're coming out of like like they're trying to do it from like a heavy metal aspect. because that's what they've written about is heavy metal. Now all of a sudden they're trying to write about, some hip hop shit, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me, because not saying that they aren't, hip hop lovers and are also, just because they're in heavy metal doesn't mean they can be in hip hop. I'm not saying that, but it seems a little off to me. You know what I mean? So to see like Fat Joe, to see Nori and DJ EFN, doing their things with drink champs and all that, I think it's amazing, and I think it's great, and I think it's great for the culture. And I think it adds an extra layer, to the culture, because now you got guys who were the artists or were the producers, and now they're part of the, the quote unquote media, and I think that they're helping kind of give more of an inside look into, the thought processes and the mentalities and, the history of hip hop. And I think it's great. I think it's great all the way around.
Plus, when you mention people coming through from different backgrounds, like, they coming from the heavy metal crowd. Now, this is my personal opinion. It seemed to me that they're trying to capitalize off the popularity of the culture of hip hop, because nobody really checking for metal like that anymore. I mean, it's still more like a niche following with it, but it's not big as it was. But hip hop, it has expanded to $1 billion enterprise. So they figured, let me go ahead and take what I know of the rock culture, which is, hardcore partying, drugs, and assets, and let me go into this lane.
Right. And I'm not saying that they can't be, that they're not, just as well versed in hip hop as they are in this, maybe in one of these other genres. I'm not saying that at all. But sometimes it just hits me a little weird that, I'm reading articles and it's almost like I can tell, who's going to write what article just by the headline, because it's almost like a clickbait headline. And it's kind of like I'm just not a huge fan of that. If you're going to write about hip hop, you're going to write about rap music, you're going to do those kinds of things, why are we, almost trying to devalue it by almost writing from almost a negative standpoint instead of a more positive standpoint. Like when I read articles, I don't know why, but it's a huge pet peeve of mine that, and it's not just rap and hip hop, this is in sports media, whatever. It's like whenever something good happens to an artist or to an athlete, right? Just won a national title, right? Just had a platinum record. It's like as soon as something good happens, we can't just leave an article about that. We've got to intertwine in that article some of the bad shit that happened. Right. And it's like, why are we doing that? Like, why can't we just celebrate the accomplishment? Why can't we just celebrate, this story? Why do we have to say, for an example, and I don't know why I'm using this example, but it just
it's okay. No, head. go ahead. Run with it.
I read articles about, like Dr. Dre, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Dr. Dre dropped an album right now, or was doing the Super Bowl like he did last year, right? Why are we not just celebrating the fact that Dr. Dre is headlining the Super Bowl and, talking about his accolades and his accomplishments and stuff like that? But I'm reading articles that are talking about, Dr. Dre, he's going to, headline the Super Bowl, and he's going to have Snoop Dogg and Eminem and Kendrick Lamar and Mary J. Blige. Oh, and by the way, Dr. Dre just went through this nasty-ass divorce and blah, 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 blah. You remember this episode that he did with D. Barnes? Like, why are we dragging all this shit up into this article?
Right.
Why are we not just keeping the article?
Go ahead.
Why are we not just keeping the article about this great achievement that Dr. Dre and hip-hop is doing right now? Now, when I read about that you got to include all this other negative shit that, that has gone on in Dre's life, that, some of the shit was 30 years ago. right? But we're still dragging it up because we feel like, what, we got to tell a complete story? No, we're talking about the Super Bowl. Let's just concentrate on that. But I can almost tell who's writing that article.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely written with a biased slant.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can tell how they look. I can tell how they look by the way they word things and stuff. Just like somebody wrote an article on Complex saying that 21 Savage was the best rapper 2022. I'm like, let me look at this guy up, see how he look, man. He like one of the type of guy we probably used to give wedgies in high school. So let me take a look at him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about all that, but yeah, I mean, it's, there's definitely a different, outlook, in the media now with certain things, and some of that stuff, and that's why I said earlier, I write about what interests me, and I try to keep it positive, and I try to keep it, in a celebratory, kind of thing. I don't like to drag up people's past. I don't like to talk about the negative shit that might be attached to them or whatever. It's, you know what? This dude was a great artist. This dude was a great producer. This dude, is a great lyricist. I talk about, some of the things he's released, some of the albums he's done and stuff like that, and really try to, I don't know if I would say really try to give him the flowers when I'm writing about it, but I'm trying to keep it positive. I don't give a shit about the beef.
Right.
That he had with this person,
right.
He had with that person. I don't give a shit about the divorce. That's not my business. I don't give a shit. You know what I'm saying? I just certain things like that. Like I don't care about it, and I don't think we should care about it. I think what we should care about is celebrating these people for who they are and what they're doing. That's good. You know what I mean? You can't celebrate somebody for handing out turkeys on Thanksgiving Day and then talk about some bad shit that they did in the same fucking article.
Yeah.
You've just devalued your whole story, your whole article, and you only did it for for the clickbait.
And you're absolutely right, because it cheapens the whole story. Because when you're dealing with something, number one, we don't need that revisionist history. Because the fact is, when shit happens like it does, and you're absolutely right, Chad, when it happens, it happens. When we watched The Defiant Ones on HBO, the documentary about Jimmy Iovine and Dre. And
right.
With Dre to this day, it's still, look, we know that Dre will tell you himself, because it came out of his mouth. Dre will tell you he was out of his fucking mind when he was young, drinking too much and acting crazy. There's other things that we know. We're not saying that on air, of course, but it's like that man has, no matter what his failings or shortcomings has been, the man is one of the greatest producers, the greatest contributors to hip-hop and music in general in world history. I'm like, let's celebrate that man and let him be great. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And not just him, but any of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't write an article or a story or whatever celebrating, the release of an album or the fact that they're headlining this or doing whatever, and then talk about all the bad shit. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And if that's the type of writer or that's the type of platform that you want to have, then that's the type of platform that I'm not going to pay attention to. And they may have millions of views, millions of readers, but I'm not going to be one of them. And that's just me. That's just my personal taste. Because like I said earlier, I don't do the clickbait shit. I'm not going to say, my headline's not going to read, I don't know, guy who hit kid in the head with a bottle hands out turkeys on Thanksgiving. Like, wait a minute, what? Like,
yeah.
Shit like that just don't make sense. You know what I'm saying?
Well, one thing about it, y'all, and we know this, because one thing about it on the show, we've interviewed we've interviewed so many people. We've had guests on the show. We knew certain things about them, and we weren't going to bring it up. We've had former porn stars on the show. We weren't going to bring up all that shit about, this, that, and the other, because we understand it from a bigger picture. that they are people first. And there are certain things, yes, it's a part of their life, but it's not their total life. People have a multifaceted, diverse, and, experimental existence. We live life and we learn from things. Not everything we do we're going to like, we're proud of, but it's called we make mistakes, we're human, and we grow, we evolve from it. And we have a right to live our best lives, not being constantly reminded of the things we did wrong that may have contributed to shortcomings or even long-term bad outcomes. Nobody needs to have that storm cloud being held over them their entire life. People have a right to move on from things.
Right.
And journalism should be from a perspective of if there's a cautionary tale that is to be said about how people did things that were not the best, then that's fine. But let's not beat people over the head about shit that they've done 30 years ago. After a while, it gets old. And after a while, it just seems like you're still digging for something that really, in the broad context, especially if this person has acknowledged their mistake, has apologized, and has been resolved to be a better person because of it, let that person grow. Why is it y'all still want to hold that over them? But that's
and some of it,
yeah.
And some of it is, when I see articles like that or whatever, it's like, well, this dude just didn't have nothing to write about.
Yeah.
Or this writer, man or woman, they didn't have nothing to write about. So they have to put all this stuff in their piece because, I don't know, they got to get 5,000 words or whatever. I mean, I don't know. But it's like, it doesn't even have to be something from 30 years ago. It could be something from last year. Like, we don't need to keep dragging it up. There's Wikipedia.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And on top of that, why we going? Yeah, they tell the same story.
I don't need to hear about it every time I read an article about this guy. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't need to keep hearing the same negative shit about that guy.
Right.
About that artist, about that producer, about that entertainer, about that athlete. You know what I'm saying? But celebrate them. Stop trying to devalue it.
Or even if they do some fuckery, let them do their fuckery and then we just ignore
Let them deal
like
with
with 6ix9ine.
Yeah,
like with 6ix9ine. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we know he did what he did, but the thing is, it's like the dude didn't make great music to begin with. And honestly, now he's embraced this whole troll being a troll, but I'm like, dude, so basically, okay, first you went from mediocre to rap, albeit I understand why he told, given the situation. Shameless plug, shout out to Sean Sotero, pick up the Dummy Boy book because it tells the whole story. But okay, now 6ix9ine, all right, okay, Tekashi, we get it now. Okay, so you told, but now you're embracing this whole element of negativity about, well, yeah, and it's like, dude, okay, so where's the rest of your career now? You're just going to basically be a self-parody of yourself in terms of the world elements. And I'm like, and you're going to embrace that. Yeah, I mean, but
this generation worships the bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we're in, the society now it's about the drama. It's about the salaciousness. How much more, fuckery or do we want to see? Do we want to read about? Do we want to watch? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just that's just where we're at now. You know what I mean? But like I said before, me doing what I do with my platform, my podcast, my website, whatever, that's my choice to make sure that, I'm putting out the best or writing about the best and talking about, just the music. I'm just trying to keep it about the music. I don't care about all the drama. I don't care about all the, the clickbait type stuff. I don't care about that kind of stuff. If my clickbait is gonna be any clickbait, it's gonna be, like what I did the interview with Chris the Glove, and he was telling me this story about how an early Madonna was on the stage, right? Like she wasn't even Madonna yet, and she was on the stage and got on the stage, you know, with Ice-T and started doing like this whole kind of like, I don't know, some kind of weird shit or whatever. So, you know, that was part of the thing. You know, it was this cool ass story that Krista Glove was telling. You know what I'm saying? If that's the extent of my clickbait, cool. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a dope story, it's a dope story. You know what I mean? I don't feel like I need to fluff it and start, you know, devaluing it with all this other stuff in it. You know?
Yeah. Now that goes to the podcaster land where we see certain people getting out there now in terms of how they're seemingly because I know Key's ready to jump on this one, and I'm going to let them get in like the Road Warriors. We got, you know, some of these podcasters are like picking fights with these people unnecessarily in the name of what they call, and it's basically stupidity and crash test dummy dunceness disguised as journalism, because that ain't no journalism from where we come from. How do you feel about some of these guys getting out here and just, you know, I guess when we look at what we do, because we take it so seriously, it's a situation, we understand it from a level of having respect because we understand what it means to do this, coming from the culture. And you have some people that are really not from it. And their whole thing is, however, they can, because hip-hop is big. We know that. So now it's like a lot of people don't have the love for it. Their thing is just as long as they can get in on it so they can eat off of it. And that's where the vulture mentality comes in.
Right.
You know, the culture is alive and well. So we don't need no vultures flying around like it's dead in the desert. No, hip-hop is very much alive. We just need to shoot the buzzards down in terms of go buzzard hunting because they live in foul and wipe them out of the picture because they're bringing it down. Go ahead, please.
Are you asking me like how I feel about it?
Yeah. Like how do you feel about what's up? Because I know you and King. King, go ahead and jump on this because I know there's a couple people you have in mind that are like, yeah, they're the biggest offenders of this shit. I'm not going to drop no.
Okay. I'm not going to drop no names about it, but yeah, there's definitely people out there that do that, and I feel like that's, you know, counterproductive to what the ones who are really trying to do good with their platform. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, like I said just a minute ago, we're living in a society now where it's about the drama. It's about the beefs. It's about the clickbait, you know, type headlines and stuff like that, because that's what, you know, society is looking for. You know, that's why we have this whole cancel culture type thing that's come out now. Is everybody's looking for a way to tear people down. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's the society that we're in now. And, you know, when I'm listening to podcasters or you know, I'm reading an interview or, you know, reading an article, you know, like I said before, you know, for me, that's the biggest turnoff for me is, you know, the first part of the article is good, and then all of a sudden here comes all this bullshit that has no reason to be in this article, or that has no reason to come up during this interview, you know, or during this podcast. I mean, I get, you know, there's some stuff that, you know, that needs to be asked, you know, as far as, you know, kind of what's going on, because that's news, right? But the dwelling on it and just the oversaturation of it just becomes too much. And so again, like, you know, for what I do, you know, I do it because I love it. I do it because, you know, I enjoy celebrating the culture and what's happening within the culture. You know, we lost, you know, Laylaw. We lost CPO Boss Hogg. You know, we just lost Uncle Chuck for 1,500 or nothing.
Yeah, that was crazy.
We've lost MC Breed. You know what I'm saying? We've lost so many people. You know, we just lost Dangerous Dame, you know, over the weekend. You know, we've lost so many people that have contributed and done great things in the music industry that for me and in my mind, it's like, man, there's no time for all the bullshit. You know, we need to be uplifting and celebrating people for their accomplishments, not just for what they have done in the past, but what they're continuing to do and what they're going to do in the future. And with my platform, that's what I aim to do. You know, I aim to educate people on certain aspects. You know, I dig behind the scenes of, you know, this record or this song or, you know, this album. You know, that's what I do because I want people to know, you know, the history of some of this stuff. You know, I want people to know the history of, you know, Brother J and the X-Clan and, you know, Chuck D and Flavor Flav and Public Enemy and, you know, even people that don't get the love that I feel like they deserve, you know, like an MC Breed or like my homie Prozac. You know, Prozac's 35 years deep. East Palo Alto legend. Working with Tupac and Digital Underground and Shock G to now, you know, he's done stuff with Too Short, Mount Westmore. You know, he's done a lot of big things that, you know, a lot of people don't know about. He's a dope-ass producer. Not even producer, he's just a dope-ass artist. You know what I mean? And Prozac's one of them dudes, you know? Ant Banks, you know, producer, super producer. I was at the thing in Oakland where they did the Soul Beat TV tribute to Ant Banks. You know, this dude's been a part of, 30, 40 million records sold. Platinum records, gold records. You know what I mean? Guy like that, like DJ Quick, same kind of scenario. You know, a lot of these dudes don't get the recognition, get the love, the admiration that I feel like that they deserve. You know, why? Because you got a lot of platforms that just want to push the negativity and push the bullshit.
Yeah. And that's something, yeah. And that's something that I think especially, and I'm going to go there, especially for black content creators, it's not good for us because it puts us in a negative light. It plays to the negative stereotype as black people. This all we're about is drama and that we are incapable of having thought-provoking, intellectual, and meaningful, deep discussions that does not necessitate stupidity. It limits us. And that's something that we, you know, I think just need to get away from. You know what I'm saying? It's like let's show for the betterment of the culture and for our people that we can engage in something respectful, real, relevant, and responsible. And we can be the best doing it.
Right.
You know, and that's important. It's in this journey, in terms of what you've been doing, Chad, and you've been doing this so many years, what was probably the most favorite interview you did with somebody?
Oh, man, favorite interview?
Yes.
I couldn't even pinpoint just one. I mean, one of my favorites was the one I did with Too Short. Another one was CPO Boss Hogg.
Rest in peace. Yeah, we had him on the show a few
definitely
years
rest
back.
in peace. Yeah, he wanted me to write a book, like my own book, and I kept you know, I'm not gonna. Nobody's interested in that, but he kept on me about it. So I finally started writing the book, and I hate that he's gone because now he's not gonna be able to read it or whatever, but. He was a good, solid dude. We became friends, over the years. So, definitely interviewing CPO Boss Hogg was one of my favorites. Interviewed Fred Wreck a couple of times. He's got great stories, especially, behind some of his great, productions that he's done. The story about how the Gangsta Nation record with West Side Connection came about. Great story. Behind that. I'm trying to even think, man. Sir Jinx, you know, that was a DOC. I mean, I got so many interviews that I've done. I can't just pinpoint one favorite, but those off the top of my head are some of my favorite ones.
Yeah, but that means it's definitely something that you had a very rich, distinguished, and I mean essential history. I mean, you contributed to the culture in so many ways that has enriched it, and that's something. One thing about it, we all understand collectively the responsibility that we share to be the very best, to represent being the very best. And that's something we don't take lightly. And that's something we're just going to keep continuing to do. And we know you're going to do that as well. As the time winds down, Chad, this has been absolutely awesome. This has been educational. This has been informative. And definitely hilarious on a lot of parts. We thank you, and you're welcome back anytime. Before we go, you want to shout out, your media, plug everything. Tell everybody where to find you.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. This is one of the rare times that I've been on the other side of an interview, so I appreciate you guys taking the time out and reaching out to me and having me on your show. You can find me, got my website, chadkiser.com. The podcast is Conversations with Chad. I'm getting ready to had a little hiatus, so I'm getting ready to get some new episodes up on that. Got some great lineup, a great lineup of people coming up on that. Social media is just Chad M. Kiser, at Chad M. Kiser. That's, Twitter, Instagram, all the major social media platforms. The only other thing I want to plug is I'm currently in the middle of writing a book for and with Ant Banks, producer extraordinaire, super producer. We're writing his book, myself, Ant Banks, and Shad Reed. We're doing that book. That should be coming out shortly. Other than that, man, like I said, appreciate you guys having me on. Anytime, anywhere, y'all just let me know.
I'm going to send you my address, Chad, because I got to get an advance copy of that book, and I want a signature from all of y'all. We got to get an autograph from all of y'all.
Okay, for sure. No doubt.
Yeah, man. But Chad, thank you so much, man. Yeah, absolutely. And even though it's a little bit of a, y'all working a little bit with it, Cardinal Pride, we know it's strong in you, so we know they're going to get it right again eventually.
Oh yeah, we're gonna turn it around. I got all the faith in the world. We're gonna turn it around.
Yeah, man. Definitely. Yeah, man.
I just need the fan base to calm down a little bit. Like, we're gonna be all right. We just gotta get through this little bump in the road. We'll be all right though.
Yeah, and it happens. King and myself, we're diehard Carolina fans, so we know how it is. But one thing about it is, that's the great thing about college ball. 1 year it can all be turned around. So you just keep pushing and you support the team regardless. So yeah,
that's all you can do.
Definitely. So once again, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you. God bless. And King, take us out of here.
On that note, we about to be up out of here. Thank you once again for joining us. Thanks for everybody that took the time to listen to us and ride with us on this journey of 539 shows. We're going to keep it going forward for 2023. We thank you once again. We thank you once again, Chad, for joining us. The build has been tremendous, and it's been a beautiful thing to give podcasters and people that's involved with media that form of shine as well. So you definitely welcome back in the near future.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Appreciate you. And we out. Peace.